We all know about the end in Minecraft. This is the place that we all come to defeat her, the Ender Dragon. Except normally, once we find ourselves here, we are well prepared with powerful armor and weapons to slay her with ease. However, today, that is not going to be the case. I have put together a mod pack that completely changes every aspect of the dimension that we've come to know as the End. This place is full of new biomes with many mysteries to be unlocked and many crazy mobs that definitely do not want me here. And the scariest part about it is that I will be stuck here with whatever supplies this place has to offer, and if I die, it's all over. Will I be able to conquer this land and defeat the Ender Dragon in her own territory, or will I fall prey to one of the many traps this place holds? Today, we are going to find out. But first, if you aren't new to the channel, then I'm sure you've been wondering where I've been for the last month and a half. If you see my community posts that YouTube shows to pretty much no one, then you would know that my computer has been broken for almost a month's time. I started having issues with blue screens back during the beginning of the Deceit SMP, and after about a week, my PC would no longer boot at all. And I tried a ton of fixes to get it working, but I finally had to give up and take it to a PC repair shop where, after a ton of wasted time, I finally figured out that my brand new RAM had stopped working and my CPU cooler began leaking coolant onto both my SSD and my motherboard. Anyways, fast forward to now, my computer is fixed, but because of that leak, I lost all of the files on that drive, which normally wouldn't be a big deal because I keep everything on separate SSDs and back stuff up to the cloud, except for the fact that my Minecraft world backups were literally on the same drive as the world's. In hindsight, that was very dumb of me, and I definitely should have fixed that in advance, but yeah, I ended up losing my hardcore world, the hardcore ocean world, some other projects that I had going on, and even this end world. So today's video is kind of an update video, plus I wanted to show you just how far I had gotten in this world before Thanos snapped it out of existence, because this was honestly a pretty cool mod pack. Plus, there is a link to this mod pack down in the description below, and while you're there, don't forget to check to see if you subscribed, because I am back for more content, and I am sure you are going to love it. And if you do go on to enjoy the video, then don't forget to drop a like and leave a nice comment, because they really help me out a ton, and I love seeing what you all have to say. Anyways, enough of that backstory, because it is time to survive 100 days in the modded End. On the first day, I found myself far from alone on a gorgeous island full of giant mushrooms surrounded by endermen and these very handsome slimes that shall from here on out be referred to as Chad slimes. The first thing I did was succumb to my gamer needs by getting what I assumed was wood from the giant blue mushroom trees, and I made myself a crafting table and a sword and axe, and now that I was armed, those annoying Chad slimes were about to be demoted from their job of being alive. So I quickly cleaned them up with my wooden sword, and apparently they only dropped regular slime, just like regular non-Chad slimes. Step up your game, Chad slimes. Anyways, now that I could mine wood in peace, I grabbed some more of it and I set off to climb up this treehouse that I saw when I first spawned in. And once climbing up the ladder and getting inside, my mind was absolutely blown with all of the different things that I was very unfamiliar with. The last time I experienced this feeling of not knowing what any of the blocks around me was my first time playing Arlcraft. While I was up here, I began indefinitely borrowing things as any good civilian would do. I grabbed some books from the bookshelves and these really cool display pillars that apparently let you put items in them and they float around. And after I was finished borrowing anything that I wanted, I looked out the window to see a crashed end ship that I also wanted to go loot. So I crafted my wood into planks and I built my way over to check it out, and there was a brewing stand and a chest that both had absolutely nothing in them. And at this point, I was kind of worried about where I was going to get all of my food from. But hey, at least in the distance, there were some more insane biomes for me to explore and hopefully find something. On day 2, I began looking around this island for anything that I could use to make some stone tools or eat, so I didn't die to death. And while looking around, I found some of these ores that actually dropped ender shards, which could be crafted into ender pearls, which seems pointless since I'm surrounded by endermen, but at least they look nice when you craft them in the blocks. After stealing a couple of ender ores, I went back to the end ship so I could bridge my way to the closest nearby island, and apparently the dragon heads still spawn on the ships, so I did what any gamer would do and I stole it. Not long after this, I made the biggest mistake I could have ever made, and I looked at an enderman, and this guy ran up on me like an anime villain and knocked me down to 1 heart, so I fled for my life, and he would not leave me alone. So I took my chances and I jumped onto the end ship and I built my way up in fear, and not gonna lie, I sat here for about 3 minutes straight just punching this guy to death, and my palms were very sweaty and there was definitely vomit on my sweater during this process. Even though I was absolutely terrified this guy was going to end my hardcore run after the first day, I couldn't help but fall in love with the beautiful mob animations that some of these mods just added to this experience. Anyways, now that he was gone and it was very likely that I was going to die, I had 1 heart left and there was no food to be found anywhere near me. I built my way across to this giant area that had dark purple stone, and I dug myself into the wall and made myself some stone tools, and I got a little ballsy. I looked at an enderman so I could kill him, and boy was that a mistake. These guys were very, very smart now, and I was honestly terrified. While waiting for this guy to come back, I was looking in the menu and I found this incredible item not found texture block that I could actually craft, and while checking it out, the enderman ducked down and looked at me inside of my little hut, which absolutely freaked me out. Honestly, I was expecting him to just crouch down and walk his way inside of the house and just kill me. However, instead of doing that, he came in for his terrifying final aggro, and just like that, I slayed him on the spot. I was finally safe. Kind of. On day 3, I collected some thalicium ores and I began smelting them in my furnace. Thalicium is apparently one of the new ores that can be found around the end, and they can be made into armor. So I took the 4 that I had made out of the furnace and I made the terrible decision of making thalicium boots instead of a pickaxe or something that I could actually use to kill anything. However, these bad boys gave me a half a point of armor, which was safe to say that they were basically worthless. So now that I had my Gucci end boots, I felt like I was ready to face the world, so I set out to find a biome that actually had some food in it. I stopped by a nearby tree for some wood so I could bridge across, and I built my way across to this new desert area. And while over here, I gathered myself some more thalicium, and then I saw it in the distance. This purple biome had chorus fruit, and I never in my life thought I would ever be excited to see chorus fruit. I gathered some with my axe, and now every time I eat, I get to teleport randomly for free. This was a deal that even Billy Mays himself would salivate for. I continued exploring through this biome while grabbing tons more chorus fruit along the way, and I built across to this orange biome, and I couldn't help but stop and pick up every new item that I saw. I felt like a kid in a Toys R Us. And honestly, all of these blocks were really cool looking. There were plants here that dropped orange lanterns, kind of like shroom lights, and the wood was orange, just like creamsicle ice pops. Also, while I was exploring, I decided to dig down to these weird orange ores that turned out to be amber, and they can be made into amber blocks that honestly looked pretty nice, but were kind of useless. On day 4, I found myself in a vibrant blue biome with these trees that turned into planks that basically looked like warped wood planks, and then I stumbled my way into this very dark biome next door. And this place was low-key terrifying. There were purple mushrooms that gave you blindness when you stepped on them, but I did find another source of food with similar blue mushrooms. But not gonna lie, I kind of didn't want to eat them because I was pretty confident they were gonna kill me. I continued exploring through this biome until I found myself surrounded by these really strange dark figures that weren't that strong, but they just kept multiplying, and I had zero interest in finding out what happened when they hit me, so I was trying to get out of here as fast as I could. And while trying to get out of there, I ended up running into some phantoms that did so much damage because I had next to zero armor. So I fled back the way I came because I was beyond done with everything that this biome had to offer. While trying to figure out which way I wanted to go, I made myself another furnace and I began smelting all of the thalicium ores I had, so that way I had as much armor as I could get so I could run my way through this hell biome as fast as possible. While waiting for these to smelt, I took a huge risk and I tried the shadow berries, and they didn't really do anything bad, or at least that I could figure out. However, after eating it, there were 2 more of those shadow people that kind of came out of nowhere, and honestly, I swear if eating those berries spawns them, I'm going to flip. Anyways, I waited here for the rest of the day while my ores smelted, and I made myself a full set of armor, which was about about as good as iron. And after that, I learned that you apparently can't make tools with it. So I guess I was still stuck with stone tools on day 4. On day 5, now that I had a full set of iron equivalent armor, I was ready to go back into the darkness. And I never thought I'd see myself saying that sentence. I gathered my things and I took off running through the biome while dodging all of the weird dark figures, blinding mushrooms, and sky demons. And once I got to the end of the biome, I saw a weird purple structure in the distance that kind of looked like one of those underground dungeons from Arlocraft. So I began collecting a bunch of wood so I could bridge my way across the massive gap of void, and while I was doing this, I was ambushed by more of the dark figures. And I found out that they hit like a semi-truck. After I finished gathering enough wood, I built my way across the void, and I continued on throughout the dungeon. And of course, there were a ton more of those dark guys in here. After exploring the rest of this area, I saw a nearby end tower thing that I decided to make my way towards while I was being harassed by some more sky demons. And once I escaped them, it turned out this tower was basically nothing. There was nothing here. Nice. On day 6, after leaving that gross shadow biome behind, I made my way through a sulfur looking biome, and I found myself inside of this new biome that kind of looked like the inside of your mouth after eating a ton of blue candy. Also, I just like to say, I wrote that down about 2 months ago. I have no clue what I am referring to. Anyways, while punching different pieces of nature as one does, I discovered another source of food that didn't teleport me, and I could plant and reharvest it. This biome was full of these things called azure berries. They didn't give me much hunger, but they were renewable and didn't randomly yeet me somewhere every time I ate them. So honestly, I was kind of in heaven at this point. As I continued through the biome, I grabbed as many of these berries as I could find, and once I made it to the other side, I finally saw something amazing in the distance. My very first end city. However, I had to be very careful when I get there because this mod pack added something special that wasn't exactly a big fan of me being alive. That spawned near said end cities. Anyways, I spent the rest of day 6 collecting wood and building over to my first end city. On day 7, I headed up to the end city looking for the surprise that should have been waiting for me at the bottom of the tower. However, there was nothing here. So I dug into the sidewall, and while being shot by a ton of shulkers, I came to the realization that I was going to have to be super careful in here if I wanted to get the loot and get out alive, because my food had 0 saturation. So I was not going to heal at any rate worth anything. During my exhibition of this place, I did next to no damage to the shulkers, and they were smacking me up pretty badly. I made my way into the first loot room, and these guys would not stop letting me have it. And my crappy sword gave out on me on the spot. So out of sheer desperation, I quickly looted the chest, and there was a diamond helmet and sword in there that I quickly grabbed, and I came super close to dying during this. I barricaded myself in the corner with some wood planks while I very slowly healed. Honestly, these were going to be a rough 100 days without any food that had saturation. Anyways, while I was waiting here, I put on my diamond helmet, and this boy had protection ore. So now that I was all healed up and geared up, I broke out and went on an absolute rampage with my brand new sharpness 2 diamond sword. And once all of these shulkers were disposed of, I finished looting the chest, and there were some top-notch loot in there. There were 5 diamonds, a pair of iron leggings, and a brand new battle axe. I broke the ender chest for the obsidian, and I crafted my very first shulker box using the chest that was next to it. And now my inventory was so much better. I also remembered that I had installed a mod that allowed me to open shulkers without placing them, which is honestly god tier and should be in the vanilla game. Hello, clear inventory. After finishing the first loot room, I continued my way up to the next, and for some reason the shulkers up here did even more damage to me, even though I now had better armor, which was absurd. But I still powered through it and Control-Alt deleted all of the floaty boys while eating my 0 saturation berries. And once I got to the chest, there was a Prot 4 iron chest piece and a diamond halberd in here, which was pretty damn good, not gonna lie. I crafted a second shulker while I was up here, and I once again made my inventory squeaky clean. This shulker mod is god tier. I began day 8 by jumping down to get a critical kill on a shulker, except I forgot that the Better Fight mod added stuns. So I hit the ground and stunned myself and got shot by him, but I did still manage to take him out, so I guess in the end it all kind of worked out. That is, until I saw the surprise that I I said would be here waiting for me. Purr golems. These boys guarded the end cities from dirty thieving Minecraft players, kinda like me. And there were 2 of these mans guarding the area that I had to be very careful about because they do an absolutely insane amount of damage. So instead of going down there and dealing with them, I built over top of them and I hid from my fears instead of facing them. And upon getting to the 3rd loot room, I made the genius play to just jump down into the middle and lose a ton of health in the process. However, things were still good because I quickly cleaned up the room and the loot in the chest was honestly kind of mediocre, but I did now have enough to make myself 2 brand new shulker boxes. So you could say that I was living like Larry. After finishing off the final room of shulkers, I climbed up to the closest path to the end city ship, and while looking back, the golems were multiplying. Because there were now 3 of them and they made me super uncomfortable, but not as uncomfortable as the end ship, I looked down and all I saw were weak knees and mom's spaghetti. If I get shot by a single shulker and don't make it under the mast of the ship in time, then my chances of not becoming a pancake were slim to none. But I was done living a life of fear, so I just did it and not a single shulker hit me until I got to the ship. So I broke in and killed the shulker, and one of the chests had 7 more diamonds inside, and the other one had 11 iron ingots, which I desperately needed to make things like anvils. So that way my tools didn't keep breaking. There was also a katana, a saber, and a looting 3 diamond sword. I got a pair of diamond boots that I quickly switched with my iron ones, and in fact, I was so excited about this loot that I almost walked away without taking the elytra. But I did go back for it, and now that I had successfully robbed the city of all of its loot, I took one look back at it just to see that those golems spawn and despawn just like Endermen, which is a pretty big nope from me, dog. On day 9, I donned my elytra and took one last look at the city, and I took off in the opposite direction that I came from. And after landing, I immediately looked at an Enderman by mistake, except my massively wrinkly brain kicked in, and I jumped into a nearby pool of water, so this jerk couldn't touch me. So while I was in here, I started smacking him, and he tried to roundhouse kick me in the face, but he got stuck in the water, and as the great Fit MC once said, clown down. While I was here, I took advantage of my newly found iron, and I made 2 buckets and collected enough water to scare away the Enderman and make an infinite water source in the future place that I decide to call home. Anyways, as I was exploring another one of these blue biomes, I ran into a roaming band of sticky boys, also known as Chad Slimes, and I gave them the business. I also decided to test something out that I haven't used yet. If you're also playing this mod pack and you hit the R key, it will change the game's entire combat system. Just look at these insane slashes. This is honestly a super cool mod, but you should really be careful while using it in the end because you might fall to your death and really regret it. For the next 3 days straight, I continued exploring through sulfur and forest biomes until I found another one of those purple dungeons. And as I was entering this place, something was off. There were shulkers on the wall that weren't attacking. I ran up to one of them and I tried smacking it, except it didn't take damage. And then I realized something. These were not real shulkers. These were shulker boxes, and the loot inside of them was absolutely busted. There were diamonds, a heart item that gave me more health, and some busted OP pickaxes and shovels. I also got to keep the brand new shulkers, and the heart item gave me an additional 5 hearts, which blew my mind. So I went over to the second shulker, and there was a bunch more random loot, and of course I took that shulker as well. I made my way down the stairs to continue exploring the room, and there were 2 more shulkers with a bunch of top-notch gear. I was insanely stoked at this point because there was a strengthened bow and more gold and iron in them, which I would have no other way of getting in this end-only world. After looting this room, I continued my way through the dungeon until I found another room with an OP loot chest. Inside of it, there was a Prot 4 diamond chest piece with binding that I put on instead of my iron one, and as I found more and more loot, I began thinking there must be a catch, right? There was no way this place was safe with OP broken loot. And then I ran into this weird thing. I mean, I don't really know how else to describe it. It kind of looked like the thwomps that would slam their face against the ground in Mario 64. So instead of waiting to see what he did, I left him there instead, and I made my way out with all of his OP loot because I was thinking that he must have been dangerous somehow, and I was not willing to risk losing everything. That is until I found myself in a corner with another one of them running up on me. So I placed a crafting table down to stop him, and I ended up being scared of nothing because he died in only 2 hits. So yeah, it turns out these dungeons have absolutely busted loot with almost no risk. Nice. On day 13, after leaving the purple dungeon, I found myself back in the literal worst biome in the game, the Shadow Realm. And while I was here, I stumbled across another end tower, and this was one of the ones that had a basement. So I dug my way down very carefully because I'm pretty sure there were purple golems spawned down here, except when I got to the bottom, there was literally nothing. No loot and no enemies. So I left the tower and the shadow biome, and I noticed something real nice in the distance. That was right, it was another end city. However, this one was way across this massive void area with no islands in between. So I spent the rest of this day gathering resources and building a massive bridge across. And once I got there, I scoped it out, and it looked like there were only 2 loot rooms, which wasn't honestly that great, but it could have also been worse. On day 14, while I was checking out the end city, I noticed one of the purple guards down below, and now that I was a pretty beefy boy, I decided to take him on 1v1, and honestly, he wasn't that bad. After killing him, he dropped an Eye of Ender, which I could use for future ender chests. While I was down here, I also noticed this cool looking house that I decided to go inside, and I may or may not have stolen all of the books from. After robbing whoever lived in that house, I entered the end city and I looted the first 2 loot rooms, which didn't really have much, but while I was at the top of the second room, I saw an end ship and a 3rd tower that was hidden by all of the trees. So then I went to put on my elytra to glide down, and it hit me. The binding enchantment basically means I no longer have an elytra, which I guess could be worse since it wasn't like I had fireworks anyways, but now it was on to plan B. I built my way over the trees, and I MLG water bucketed my way down and broke myself into the tower, which just so happened to be Shulker City. After fighting my way through all of these guys and making my way to the top, there was honestly some pretty great loot here. I got an artifact that increased my attack speed, and I immediately noticed the difference while Detroit smashing the last Shulker up top. Plus, you could also see the claws on my hand when I was empty-handed, which honestly was pretty cool. I looted the rest of the gear in here, and there wasn't really much special, but I figured why not take it, because how else was I going to get diamond gear? While organizing my loot, I also found a heart necklace that increases my speed when I take damage from enemies, which honestly could come in pretty useful with all the shulkers constantly barraging me. Now that I had stolen all of the loot from yet another tower, I went back out to the top of the trees and I jumped onto the end ship to loot the chest and steal another elytra. And at this point, I would have loved to use my elytra to fly far away from here, except I had a temporary smooth brain moment where I decided to put a binding mending chest piece on that will literally never break. So I basically will never be able to use an elytra. But you know what? It was all good. It was fine. I'm not mad. You're mad. So instead, on day 15, I made myself a diamond axe and I began mass harvesting wood from the nearby trees so I could instead bridge my way across to the next area. And while I was cleaning up this group of mans, I looked at an enderman like a small brain, and my water bucket wasn't working, but he didn't really do that much damage, so I revoked his license to exist. And now that I had enough resources to make it across the Grand Canyon of End, I began bridging and exploring until I stumbled my way into this new pink biome that had these mushroom-looking plants. That turned out to be an additional type of food that I could also farm. I continued on through while collecting more of these berries until I found myself another crashed end ship, which was basically pointless to explore, but at least I got another free enderdragon head to make up for the last 2 that I kind of forgot. So things do work out in the end. No pun intended. Anyways, I continued wandering through the different biomes all the way until the end of day 18 when I stumbled upon something great. On day 19, I discovered another one of those dungeons that were absolutely full to the brim of busted OP loot. Or so I had thought anyways. While exploring inside, I quickly ran into several dead ends until I ran out of places to go, so I figured there was nothing and I just left instead. However, not far away from this, I ran into another end tower, and this one had a basement, which meant one thing: there was loot. So I slowly made my way down because I knew there were things down here that weren't exactly the biggest fan of me being alive. And while slowly making my way through the hall, I quickly blocked off the first door, and there was a purple golem just kind of chilling in there. And this man hit me and did a lot of damage. Like, I have full Prot 4 armor. What are you doing? So while he was trapped, I cheesed him, and apparently he was different than the others because I earned an achievement after killing him. I looted the first chest, and at this point, I'm kind of numb to all this diamond, gold, and iron stuff, so nothing really caught my eye. I continued down the hallway and trapped the next guy, and I quickly took care of him, and his loot chest was kind of terrible. So I moved on to the third room, which I blocked him off as well, and I critted this man so fast that he probably woke up in the wagon at the beginning of Skyrim. Anyways, his chest loot was also subpar, but he did have beetroots in it, which is honestly great because the end is full of so much dirt. Wait a minute. On day 20, after leaving the basement from Attack on Titan, I was out exploring and I found another purple dungeon that this time was going to be full of loot because I could feel it in my bones. So I built my way over, and once I got close enough, I found the ultimate distraction. There was this absolutely stunning set of ponds that were full of sponge and end lotus plants. As Keanu would say, it was breathtaking. After stopping to take in the scenery, I broke my way into the dungeon, and the first room I found was full of skeleton skulls and a single chest that had some more diamonds and gold inside. I also casually may have stolen all of the skulls for decoration in my future house, but don't judge me because you probably would have done the same. The next room that I found had 2 chests in it, and there were boots inside that would let me sprint on top of water, which I guess wouldn't be that useful in the end, but still pretty cool. I also found some more diamonds and an apple inside, which means I can make my very first golden apple. I spent the rest of day 20 walking around here looking for more loot, and on the morning of day 21, I found the mother lode. I had found another room with 4 shulkers full of OP stuff, and there was an insane amount of gold and iron inside of each shulker. At this point, my inventory was already super beefy, but I said screw it, and I just picked up each shulker with all of the loot still inside. On day 22, after leaving the dungeon that I had picked clean, I found myself in an area that had an end tower in the distance, and I could see the basement full of loot and danger sticking out of the bottom. I began looking for the easiest way to get there, and while looking around, I actually found a second tower with another basement, and it was at that point that I knew what I needed to do. I wanted to get more ender pearls so I could get around just a little faster, so I went on a killing rampage of endermen, and I was now a force to be reckoned with. Whenever I crit an enderman, it would stun them, and I did an insane amount of damage. After killing about 4 endermen, I somehow ended up with 13 ender pearls, which makes no sense, but you know what? I will take it. And after that, I spent the rest of the day gathering some more blocks so I could build myself over to those 2 end city towers. On day 23, I began bridging my way across, and I accidentally placed out one of my shulker boxes on the end of my bridge. So I took my loot out of it and I moved on because I assumed I was just going to lose it. I could place my water bucket to save it, but I didn't know if I wanted to risk it at that point, so instead I left it behind and continued finishing my bridge. After finishing the bridge and digging down to the basement, it turned out that it was larger than normal. However, there were no loot rooms and it was kind of just a waste of time. So I beat up some Jackie Chan kung fu kicking endermen for some more free ender pearls, and I went back to my misplaced shulker box and used some water to place blocks underneath so that way I could grab it, because I decided there would be a no shulkers left behind policy. So now that I had my shulker box, I headed back over to the island in between the 2 towers, and I began building my way over to the second one, and massive surprise, this one also had no chest rooms. So ultimately, this day was a waste of time and a huge disappointment. With the lack of loot fresh on my mind, I spent the next 3 days exploring and collecting different saplings for renewable sources of wood until on day 26, I stumbled upon a new end city that actually had an end ship. So I ender pearled my way across to the next island, except I missed and I almost fell into the void and lost everything, which was exactly why I barely used ender pearls in the end in the first place. Anyways, I casually strolled my way up to the end city, and from here on, everything just went bad. I was smacking a bunch of shulkers as one would do until a purpur golem started smacking me through the wall and got me down to like 5 hearts. So I distanced myself a bit to eat, and I noticed there were a bunch more of the golems spawning all over, and then a freaking enderman hit me with some Five Nights at Freddy's level jump scare. I mean, you could see me jump in the footage. It's honestly, it's kind of embarrassing, not gonna lie. Somehow during this, I also looked at a second enderman that happened to do way more damage than he should have, so I was forced to waste my only golden apple. And honestly, this whole process was kind of embarrassing. Can I get a rip golden apple sama in the comments? After that incident was over, I built myself a pillar and I crafted myself a wooden shield, and I upgraded this boy to a spicy diamond shield. And honestly, I can't believe it took me this long to make a shield. Today was an embarrassing day. Anyways, I built over to 2 of the golems, and one by one I lured them over to me so I could kill them in a 100% fair fight, and the second one dropped me an Eye of Ender. After that, I broke into the city and began using my shield like a boss while deleting each and every shulker from existence. And once I got to the first chest room, there was a bunch of mediocre loot that was not what I was interested in. However, I of course still took it because I am a hoarder. What can I say? The biggest thing that I was hoping to find from any of these chests was actually going to be a silk touch pickaxe, so that way I could make and use some ender chests and have optimal storage in my inventory, and I could begin taking different types of end soils so I could plant different types of trees wherever I decide to call home. I continued exploring through the end city, and I cheesed a couple more golems, and then I built out towards the end ship and yeeted myself on board with an ender pearl. After killing the shulker inside, I found some god tier loot, and there was a diamond pair of boots that had prot 4 and mending. Plus, there was also an artifact that let me double jump. However, in order to use it, I would have to give up my extra health, and with how much damage the golems do, I will unfortunately have to pass on it, but I did test them out anyways, and boy, these boots could hop. On day 27, I began heading back towards the main end island so I could kill the ender dragon and maybe make a base there. And while I was on the way, I ran into another dungeon that had 2 chest rooms. The first room had a bunch of decent pieces of diamond gear, and the second chest room was full of more free skulls. Plus, there were a ton of diamonds. Overall, I ended up with 20 diamonds in total from this dungeon for ants. Also, while I was down here, I had a massive 5-head idea that I could collect the cobwebs from each of these tree rooms as a source of string. And after realizing that I could have been doing this the entire time, I made sure to take every piece of string that I could get from this place before I left. On day 28, I continued on my path back to end spawn until I found an area with 2 downed end ships, which didn't have any loot, but I did steal both of the ender dragon heads so that way I could put them in my base to flex. And while looking for other loot, I saw another end ship in the sky almost out of my render distance. And as I got closer to it, I saw another smaller end city to the right, and at that moment, I was pretty torn with which way I actually wanted to go. So I did what Vsauce likes to call a pro gamer move, and I typed the direction of the end ship in chat, dug a bunch of blocks, and built my way over to the smaller tower, and this place was not at all safe. There was a gaggle of purpur boyos hanging around the entrance, so I made a second pro gamer move, and I lured them over to a nearby ledge, and I stole their Eyes of Ender. After that, I made my way up to the loot room, and inside there was an artifact that increased the XP that I gained from mobs. And this thing also gave me more XP if I haven't killed that mob in a while, which honestly is kind of a cool perk. However, I couldn't really use this that often because the other artifact in that same slot greatly increases my attack speed, and I was not ready to give that up. On day 29, I headed back to the middle platform between the 2 end cities, and I built my way over to the Shadow Forest near the second one, and I yeeted myself with an ender pearl and headed to the tower. After killing enough shulkers, I found myself in the part of the end city that was full of mans, and one by one, I smacked them out of existence, and I took their skin to make more shulker boxes with. Honestly, when you describe it like that, kind of makes you feel bad for killing shulkers. After defeating the last member of the Shulker Elite 4, I checked the chest, and inside one of them was a god tier artifact. It was a pull floaty that basically worked as an infinite slow falling. Only thing was I had to sacrifice my extra hearts if I wanted to use it, and no, I'm not doing that. After I was done checking out that artifact and politely borrowing the shulker's brand name loot, I built my way across to the end ship, and I viciously ended this shulker's whole career. I searched both the chests for some more loot that I definitely didn't need, and I also stole the elytra, and I built around the front of the ship and stole the dragon head to add to my collection. After that, I put on my brand new flamingo floaty, which is a very manly sentence, may I add, and I floated my way down, and honestly, the thing kind of sucked. It was basically like an elytra, but 2,000 times more useless. If the floaty was a Dragon Ball Z character, it would be Yamcha. On day 30, I realized that a bunch of the items that I had added to the mod pack, like waypoints and the antique atlas, weren't actually craftable, so I added a mod that made ores spawn in the end, and after exploring, I finally found some redstone. Except Enderman kept freaking out and attacking attacking me and I didn't know what was going on until I had realized mining the ores aggroed any nearby enderman. And let me tell you, I really wish the mod creator had listed that on the page, or maybe I just didn't read it, because I was jumped and absolutely wrecked by these two endermen. I tried to build up, but they kept karate kicking me, and I was down to 3 hearts and I was panicking. But luckily, I managed to build up and kill both of them. But man, was this such an awful experience. I guess this was kind of a good thing though, because it balanced the ores in a better way, because I was kind of scared that the ores would spawn way too often and be way too easy to find since the end doesn't exactly have caves. Anyways, now that I had some redstone, I made myself a compass and I crafted myself an antique atlas that for some reason didn't display the right way on my screen, but I spent way too long messing with the config file with no success, so you win this time, antique atlas. On day 31, I continued on my quest back towards the end dragon, except on the way, I found something very odd in the distance. So I built over to it, and as I entered the building, I got an achievement that called it an end factory. I explored all of the top area, and there wasn't really anything here, but when I went into the blue dungeon underneath, things changed. There were these spawners that spawned these weird blue dudes that kind of looked like the Pokemon Trapinch, and I found myself several different loot rooms that had the typical diamond, iron, and gold loot, and then I found a god tier loot room. This thing had freaking diamond, emerald, and gold blocks around 2 chests that were also full to the brim of loot. The first chest had a freaking whoopee cushion in it that apparently makes me fart whenever I wear it. So like the civilized person that I am, I put it on my head. I looted the second chest and it had some books and paper, also god tier drops, because this was the only way that I could actually find them in the entirety of the end. Anyways, I continued exploring and looting this massive place until about day 33, and there were so many loot rooms down here. There were chests with apples for golden apples, there were chests with bread, there were more chests full of books and paper, so I could now make a full enchantment table, and by the time I left, I had a total of 11 diamond blocks, 27 gold blocks, 5 emerald blocks, 14 iron blocks, and 8 golden apples in my inventory. On day 40, I realized just how much of a child I am because I figured out how to make the whoopee cushion fart, and I was very excited about it. And honestly, you would probably be excited about it too. Just listen to my toot flute go. And now that my booty was properly relieved, did I really write this? Oh my god. I just wrote that. I wrote that in the notes. And now that my booty was properly relieved, I grabbed some resources and I built my way across the chasm and made my way into the first end city on the right. However, this place was full of nothing and sadness. Or I guess you could say nothing but sadness. There was only one loot room that had some subpar loot, and you guessed it, no silk touch pickaxe. I made my way to the top of the tower, and somehow one of the purple golems was hitting me through the roof after a shulker gave me levitation. So I was freaking out of here. I enderpearled my way down and began exploring the end factory instead, and this time, unlike the other one, there were actually chests inside of the towers up top. I went inside of the chest room, and there was the typical diamond loot and some gold. However, these chests turned out to be a bad thing because of equivalent exchange. In exchange for having these chests up top, the basement was basically non-existent, so I ended up leaving a very sad boy. And I was thinking to myself, well, at least I had the next end city, right? Well, it was actually an end tower and there was no basement under it, so at this point, I was down pretty bad. On day 41, I remembered one of the key mods that I had added to this pack. I could use iron and redstone to make a compass, which I could combine with 3 iron blocks to make a teleport pad, which would allow me to travel further without having to bridge for hours on end. No pun intended. So I placed out a furnace and I began cooking some end sand for glass, and I made the first teleporter and I named the waypoint pink and orange because I ran out of space with the name and I kind of just wanted to come back here for the trees. After this, I continued exploring, and at this point, I was getting super close to where I spawned. I stopped to place another teleport pad and I named it purple and sand because I could use it to come back for purple wood nearby the sand desert biome for glass, and I tested out the teleport pad by going back to the first one and they worked perfectly. Nice. After coming back from the teleporter, I noticed a spot where I bridged across with warped looking wood, and at this point I realized I had finally gotten back to the place where I had spawned. And if I wanted to keep going to get to the ender dragon, I was going to have to build about 1,000 blocks out from here. So I spent the rest of this day and all of day 42 collecting a ton of end stone, so I could make what I would like to call the Great Bridge. And this Great Bridge took forever to build. Like, I legit sat here for about 20 minutes, an entire in-game Minecraft day, just holding W, A, and right click. And when I finally got close to the end islands, my hands were getting very sweaty. I was so terrified that she was about to throw me off into the void and I was going to lose everything that I had worked up to. However, I had a backup plan. I had ender pearls in my hotbar as a plan B. And honestly, I am very, very happy that I did, because she shot her magic at me right as I got close. So I ender pearled myself just to be safe, and now it was on. For the past 45 days, I have been tretching my way through her end, but now it was time to take her down and claim it all. However, this wasn't going to be a walk in the park, because I came here with a bow with 0 arrows. So I was going to have to use my water source to climb each tower and punch the end crystals myself. Anyways, this fight turned out amazing. So here is a montage from the victor's POV. Cue montage. Overall, this battle took forever. I had to slowly break every end crystal, and then the end dragon absolutely wanted nothing to do with the idea of landing and fighting me sword to face. But after she landed enough times and stopped bugging the hell out, she was finally defeated and her end now belonged to me. And after collecting all of the XP from her, I had exactly 69 levels, which I could not have planned any more perfectly. Nice. Now that the end was mine, I placed my teleporter near the dragon egg, and I named it PainDomination, which, fun fact, is a lot of the common misspellings when people search my name on Google. So do me a favor, if you search me on Google, search PainDomination, please. Both of the first things that come up for my name are spelled wrong, and it hurts me. Anyways, I hope you get the pun. You see what I did there? Pain's domain. On day 47, I teleported back to the telepad by my spawn, and I collected all of my shulkers to bring them to the main island. Then I placed them all out one by one, and with this mod, it's honestly kind of a chore because you have to crouch to place them. Anyways though, now that I had all of my shulkers out, I collected all of the books that I had found so far and some wood, so I could finally make an enchantment setup. I crafted myself an enchantment table, and when going to craft the bookshelves, my brain got distracted by all of the different color options, and I landed on orange. So I went back to the pink and orange telepad, and I collected some of the nearby trees. Then I teleported back to my base and made 15 bookshelves and placed out my enchantment table, and level 30 enchantments were officially a go. So I crafted another diamond axe, and I took a chance at tier 3 enchant, only for it to be another unbreaking 3. And since there was no stone in the end, I couldn't make a grindstone, so I was stuck having to make another pickaxe. However, this time while enchanting it, it was a tier 2 enchantment, and I got Silk Touch. So I made another anvil, and I added the Silk Touch pick to one with efficiency 5, and because I forgot to add some weeb references to the last video, I decided to name this one Chibaku Tensei. Let me know in the comments below if you know which anime that's from. At this point, it's very obvious, but I still like to see the comments so I know which one of you are degenerates. So now that my pickaxe was ready to go, I gathered all of the shulker shells from my shulker boxes, and I mass crafted and placed all of them. And now that I finally had a Silk Touch pick, I could officially use ender chests. So I made 2 of them and got some purple dye from the weird stuff in my shulkers, and I dyed 8 of my shulker boxes purple and threw them into my brand new ender chest. On day 48, I made myself 2 new diamond axes, and I enchanted them in the hopes of getting a fast boy. And after enchanting both, I ended up with efficiency 4, which I guess was good enough because I didn't really have that many resources to play around with. So I then took my new axes on my journey through each waypoint where I collected different resources from each environment until I had what I would need to begin building my house. I collected the orange trees, pink trees, and some of the different colored end grasses so I could turn my main island into a better end main island. And at that point, I was only missing one block. I needed sulfuric blocks, so that way I could have a darker floor to stand out while being surrounded by all of the end stone. So I made another teleporter and I set back out to find myself a sulfur biome. And what can I say? I am a very easily distracted man. I found another purple dungeon while I was out in the distance, so I built over to it, and there were quite a few chests in here. I got some ender pearls, apples, bread, and I found another skull room with an OP loot chest full of diamonds, gold, and diamond tools. And right after leaving that place, I found a new nearby end city that I began heading towards. However, while I was heading towards it, something in the distance caught my eye. There was another end ship with a massive end city that looked to be thick with loot. However, I needed to do one thing at a time or I'd be here for days. So on day 49, I clowned on the golem that was guarding the first end city because I had the power of Herobrine and anime on my side. I broke my way into the end city, and honestly, I'll save you some time with this one. This place was a scam. They robbed me of the only chest room that there was supposed to be. Like maybe these stupid orange plants replaced a chest or something. I don't know, but I felt cheated, so I double MLG water bucketed my way down in the most aggressive fashion that I could. And I made my way over to the far more superior, definitely full of loot, mega end city, and this took a while, so cue montage. While I was looting, everything was going well until my diamond helmet that I forgot to fix broke when I got to the end ship. So I thought, I'll just loot this one last thing and then go back. Nope. The end ship was full of purple golems. So instead of going in there and dying, I placed my telepad down and I went back to my base and I scoured all of my chests for some beefy diamond helmets and pants, and I mended together a Prot 4 Unbreaking 3 and mending helmet and a Prot 4 Unbreaking 3 mending pair of leggings. So I was now a full Prot 4 mending boy. And after this, I traveled back to the end ship ready for a fight. And yeah, everything despawned apparently. So I looted the two chests, and they had been some of the worst end ship chests I have ever seen. Overall, this whole process took until the end of day 52. On day 53, not far from where I left the last end city, I found another purple dungeon in the distance, and my loot senses were tingling. The very first room that I entered was the one with 4 actual shulker boxes that were so full of dank loot that they still to this day blow my mind. So one by one, I indefinitely borrowed them, and after stuffing my already fat inventory with the loot from those shulkers, I continued exploring the dungeon the easy way by walking on top of it and looking for the big rooms that were most likely chest rooms. And honestly, this was probably the largest one of these dungeons that I have ever looted so far. Plus, I didn't even come out here looking for loot in the first place because at this point, there was nothing that I even needed anymore. Why am I still looting? I spent the next 3 days continuing my journey for a sulfur biome, and I came across another end tower along the way, except this one actually had a basement. So I dug my way down, and the second I saw a side room, I panic placed blocks, to block it off because there was a big boy in there. I gave him the old razzle dazzle with crits, and the loot in here was pretty doo-doo butter, not gonna lie. So I left that disappointment of an end tower, and not too far away, I ran into yet another purple dungeon. And the very first room I found was once again the shulker room. And at this point, I'm kind of done looting these. Everything was crazy OP to the point where it no longer seemed special. At this point, I just wanted to find a sulfur biome so I could go home and build my base, man. So I continued exploring until in the distance, I found yet another supermassive end city that was probably full of tons of stonks and balloon tower defense 6 money. So I knew what there was to be done. Cue End City looting montage part 2, the sequel. After I finished looting the end city, I was kind of in a hurry to find the biome that I was looking for so I could actually start building, so I used my last ender pearl to yeet myself off of this abomination, and when I got down to the ground, I thanked a couple of endermen for their contributions to my ender pearl supplies. The very next day, day 58, was a very special day. After like 10 days of exploring and countless distractions, I had finally found a sulfur biome, and like right next to it was another super end city that had another end ship. But this time, robbing those shulkers of their worldly possessions was going to wait. So right next to the biome, I placed down my last telepad and I named it Sulfur plus End City because there is a character limit for naming these, which kinda sucks. Anyways, I spent the rest of the day gathering as much sulfuric rock as I could before I teleported back to the place that was soon to be my home. On day 59, now that I was back at the soon-to-be base, I had a lot to do. I started off by actually collecting the enderdragon egg with a torch, and honestly, this was a long time coming because I had killed the enderdragon like 15 to 20 days ago, and it kind of just been sitting here because I didn't feel like crafting a torch or fences or anything to collect it. How relatable and quirky of me. Now that I had my dragon egg and enough resources to begin my base, I started by building a path around my end portal because I wanted it to be the main attraction of my new house. I dug out all of the end stone and I made a square perimeter using the sulfuric blocks as the floor. That is until I ran out of them, so it was back to the sulfur biome for some more, and once I had a couple more stacks, I finished filling in the square and I left out part of the edges that would become a full porch similar to the other houses that I've built in the past. For day 60, I began laying out the support pillars for my house using helix tree bark because it added a nice somewhat dark touch to match the light purple of the Tanana wood, which I 100% pronounced wrong. I then added purple wood planks to act as the bottom part of the wall underneath the massive windows I was going to add. However, I had a better idea. I tried replacing the planks with actual wood that shall not be named, and I stripped it to make a smooth purple surface that looked so decadent that it would even have Gordon Ramsay on his knees begging for more. I added an entrance with 2 doors to the center of each side. However, I had to separate the doors so that way they were still centered because the end portal in the middle had an odd number center. But everything was all good because things were still looking pretty 10 out of 10. I finished up the frame that would go around the windows, and I added a few pieces of glass that I had smelted to the small windows above each door, and I began filling in the first mega window. For this build, I wanted everything to be super open so I could see the biomes around the end island that I was going to create. I made some pedestals using violet to match the bedrock around the portal, and I added the heads of fallen ender dragons to be put on display so they knew whose island this was now. I then placed the last 2 pedestals that I had in the middle of the 2 sides, and I added enchanted diamond swords to them for the flex. Except I then ran out of violet, so I couldn't add the last 2. On day 61, I used the telepad to go back to the desert to collect a ton of sand for the glass and violet for more decorations around my base. And apparently you can't use shovels to collect it faster, so I found myself beating some sand into submission with my bare hands. Even in a different dimension, I gotta teach nature who's boss. After collecting some sand, I went to the nearby mountain and collected a stack and a half of the violet so I could make more decorative lanterns and pedestals. And I went back home to begin smelting the sand since it was obviously going to take a while to get enough. I began smelting the 2 stacks of sand I had collected, and I thought maybe a diamond hammer would mine it faster, so I crafted one and teleported back to the desert, and not only did this defective Thor's hammer not break the sand faster, but it didn't break the sand at all. This thing was more useless than Ichigo during the Arrancar saga. I threw the hammer on the ground and I spit on it, then I picked it up because it was still diamonds, I guess, and I can't throw away good loot. So I went back to gathering 2 more stacks of sand by hand, and I went back to my base. While I was back at the base, I was looking through some mod items and I noticed something that the hammer could do. I could use the hammer to craft obsidian into obsidian shards, which I could use to make obsidian glass. So I tried doing that, but that also didn't work, so I wasted some of the little iron that I had left to make the iron item. And this was also a waste of time and resources because apparently this recipe just didn't work at all. So at this point, I was just at a loss and I said, screw it. Those hammers can rot in this shulker until the end island collapses 1,000 years from now. On day 62, I started the day by tending to my berry farm, and these boys dropped me 2.5 stacks more. I then crafted the remaining pedestals I needed for my definitely not disturbing shrine, and I placed the remaining 2 diamond swords, and then I crafted some new lamps using the crystals from those weird biomes that had the giant rainbow crystal structures, and I added them to the center bedrock pillar. And to finish it off, I added some extra fences just in case I got too close, so that way I didn't fall in and literally ruin this video. I spent the rest of the day waiting for the glass to smelt and filling in each window while trying not to look at any of the endermen on the other side in the process. And by the time it would have been night, I finished the last of the 2 windows. On day 63, I wanted to finish filling in my outer porch, so I went back to the sulfur biome to rob me some more resources. And while collecting the stone I needed, I got a little gutsy and I started stealing ores from the endermen because I desperately needed coal, because for some weird reason, the endwoods all act like saplings when I used them as fuel, and I was done living that wasteful life. So I fought this enderman to death and I stole this huge chunk of coal right out from under him. However, I wasn't done here. I needed more. I must consume. So I went back to my base and grabbed my Fortune 3 pickaxe so I could maximize on all of this loot. Cue end excavating montage. By the time this montage was over, this field of ores was picked clean and I ended up with so much loot. Also, during the middle of the excavation, my mind was blown by finding a nearby second mega end city right behind the sulfur biome. That also ended up having another end ship. My mind was so blown that I just kind of stood there staring at it for a bit. Like, this thing was literally sitting here just out of my render distance the whole time, waiting, watching me. Anyways, now I have twice the reason to come back here on one big mega looting trip when I do decide to go and get the end cities. On day 69, in celebration of the funny number, I placed out all of my ore-filled shulkers so I could count my loot. And while I'm doing this, you should totally check down below to see if you liked the video yet. To celebrate the 69th day, we should totally get this video to 69,000 likes. Anyways, after gathering all of the resources I had mined together, it ended up being a banger trip. I made out with 74 diamonds, 14 emeralds, 143 gold, 272 iron, and a ton of redstone, lapis, and coal blocks. And now that I had my extra resources, it was time to finish working on the inside of the house. However, I ran out of the helix wood that I used for the supports, so instead I tried to substitute dragon wood, and it didn't really work out that well. Apparently, it wasn't called dragon wood for no reason, because it literally looks like the ender dragon's skin. On the next day, day 70, since I needed more supplies, I decided I would teleport back to the orange biome and commit some more war crimes against nature. That is, until my teleporter bugged out and I had to place another, and it turns out that I lost all of my teleport locations. And I'm guessing this was because my PC blue screened while I was playing this world, which at the time I thought was due to a Windows Windows update. So I ran all the way back to my original spawn area to check on the other teleport pad, and it worked, but it didn't work. I had no clue what had happened, but I was now realizing that I lost all of my in-game waypoints. So I crafted some more warp pads, and I replaced this one, and I ran the short distance over to the nearby desert. I replaced that waypoint as well, and at this point, I guess I was lucky because there was another helix biome nearby with more of the wood I needed. So I placed the third waypoint, and I began smacking nature around like I had first intended. However, little did I know, day 70 would be the very last day that I was going to see this world, because the very next day I had tried to boot my computer, and I sat there for 8 hours straight, non-stop, getting blue screens of death while trying to get in my PC. And then after that, the rest is history. You know exactly what happened because I told you in the beginning. My computer stopped working, and I then lost this world. So yeah, I didn't get to day 100, but I do still hope that you all enjoyed this video anyways, because I did have fun making it, and I do think it was still a really cool experience. If you do want to play this mod yourself, I'll have a link in the description down below that'll lead over to a Cursed Forge link where I have made the mod pack myself for you all to enjoy. And if you did make it to the end of this video, I just wanted to give you a special thank you because it has been so long since I've had a video on the channel, and I again am really sorry that it took this long, but after this, I will have plenty more videos to come. Real quick before I do end the video, I wanted to give you all an update on what I was planning for the channel because I did have some cool plans. For the next video, I'll be uploading a challenge video that I had recorded several months ago. However, I just now got to it because of my computer issues. And then after that, I'll do a video on how far I got in my ocean world before I also lost that. And one last thing, I'd like to talk about the community post that I made about a week ago, asking you all if you wanted to see me do a regular hardcore series. So originally, after my hardcore 100 days series had gotten to 1,000 days, I was going to turn it into an episode-based series where every single episode I do something cool and unique. However, since I lost that world, I figured I'd take the opportunity now to start fresh and start an entirely new series of hardcore that would be several episodes a week instead of the 100 days every week or 2 weeks in between the other 100 days videos. On that community post, I did include a poll that asked whether or not you would like to see that on the channel, and there was the overwhelming majority of you that said either you would want to see that series or you would watch anything that I would put out. And to all of you that did vote in that poll, I'd like to say thank you guys so much because it really does mean a lot that you would say that you would watch anything I put out. So we will be going ahead and doing the hardcore series, and I don't quite know when the first episode will be, but if you do look out for community posts, I'll always keep you updated, and if you join the Discord in the description down below, you can also get updates there. Anyways, this has been PainDomination, and thank you all so much for watching this video. I will see you in the next one. Peace.